Tēnā koutou I tēnei ahi. Welcome back to this afternoon's LIANZA Conference 2021. What a stunning morning. That was amazing. I totally loved the LIANZA debate. The moot was, in case you weren't there, that qualified librarians are no longer needed in 21st century libraries. And I think a lot of qualified librarians will be very pleased that the negative team won. They were ably led by Carla Jeffrey, great team. So was the other team, though. It was a mad and vibrant time, and there were also some really good points made about lived experience and the value of education. So well done to all you 6 speakers. You all totally rocked. Brilliant librarians. Now, there were some really interesting papers this morning. We heard about National Libraries growing a Nation of Readers program to support reading for pleasure with rangatahi and tamariki. Karine Carter talked about what the future health library might look like within the change that this sector has faced and is still facing. We heard about new approaches to staff training, the use of te reo Māori in the GLAM sector. Turnbull Library staff told us about their virtual reading room pilot, and we heard about the 28-hour crowdsourcing event to develop archival information by the Lesbian and Gay Archival Trust. There were 13 lightning talks. Now, I'm not going to run through the topics for all of those, but there was some really deep and meaningful stuff, exploring burnout of library staff, services thriving during lockdown. What I think you are going to want to do is to go back in the next days, weeks, even months, and look back at the sessions, because they're all recorded, that you weren't able to attend, or ones that meant something to you and you'd like to see some more. I also want to give you a quick reminder that the LIANZA Social Committee are compiling a conference mosaic from the photos of all delegates. So all you need to do to take part in that, and please do, it'll be historic, go to the Kōrero stream at the top of the platform and scroll through to find the committee message with a double asterisk, and that will tell you how to submit your ID photo to be part of the mosaic. I also want to give you some really useful information about our sponsors. For those working in public libraries, please do visit LOTE Online for Kids and take a look. This online website, it's an online database, has over 1,300 digital picture books in 45 languages, including 25 brand new titles in te reo Māori. So you can also win your library a free 6-month subscription. Just go over there, say hi to Sunny, who is staffing the booth, and they will answer any questions that you have. Also, UBIQ has some really beautiful books for attendees of LIANZA. They've been generously donated by their publishers. So all you need to do is contact them on their virtual stand with your courier address, and they will send what they can to you. There's a list of available titles on the brochure under gifts from publishers, so go check that out. And one last thing, Parliament New Zealand quiz. This is a quiz that covers an array of mysterious things, from gargoyles to bees and historic urinals. And winners will be go in the draw for some exciting parliamentary merch. I used to, when I was a student journalist, I used to go to Parliament, to the press gallery, and steal the Parliament embossed toilet paper. It was quite impressive at my face. I don't know why I told you that. I'm just sharing. So go to the link on their exhibitor page. The Parliament New Zealand quiz sounds like a blast, and some of you will be really deeply into that, so do it. Speaking of deeply into, let's dive into this afternoon's program. I would like to introduce you to our next international keynote speakers, Georgina Bowyer and Rachel Heydecker, who both come from the Carnegie UK Trust. Now, Georgina is a policy and development officer. In addition to supporting engaging libraries, she works on projects relating to better job quality in the UK labour market, improving race inequality, and work around the digital inclusion of children and young people. Rachel is also a policy and development officer, as well as supporting engaging libraries. She contributes to the Trust's work on affordable credit to advance the scale and availability of fairer, cheaper alternatives to high-cost credit. So it's my pleasure to introduce both Georgina and Rachel to the LIANZA Conference. As with many of our international speakers, they're not here live to answer your questions, but please fire those questions through the live Q&A button. We will pass them on to Georgina and Rachel and bring their answers back to you. What you need to do now, though, is relax and enjoy their presentation. Please welcome Rachel and Georgina.
Hello, and thank you so much for having us to speak at LIANZA 2021. My name's Rachel Heydecker. I'm a Senior Policy and Development Officer at Carnegie UK. Together with my colleague Georgina Bowyer, we'll be speaking about the Engaging Libraries programme that Carnegie UK is running, sharing our learning, ideas, and stories from this programme. At Carnegie UK, we're all about wellbeing. We have been ever since we were set up over 100 years ago. Wellbeing to us today means everybody having what they need to live well now and in the future. Our office is in Dunfermline in Scotland, which is where Andrew Carnegie was born, although we're obviously currently working from home. We work across the UK and Ireland to tackle issues that threaten aspects of wellbeing and to put wellbeing at the heart of decision-making. So, what do we mean by wellbeing? At Carnegie UK, we believe that collective wellbeing happens when social, economic, environmental, and democratic outcomes are seen as being equally important and are given equal weight. And what do these outcomes mean when we say them? Social well-being is where we have all of our basic needs met. Economic well-being is when we all have a decent minimum living standard. Environmental well-being is when we all live within the planet's natural resources. And democratic well-being is where we all have a voice in the decisions made that affect us. We've worked at Carnegie UK with public libraries for a number of years, as we recognise their potential to really improve wider social, cultural, and economic well-being. For example, libraries play a really important role in relation to social well-being by being a key connector in their local areas, as well as in relation to democratic well-being through their work on misinformation and fake news, which we'll hear about a little later on. And we're here today to talk about our programme, Engaging Libraries. It's a programme which provides public libraries across the UK the opportunity to develop and deliver public engagement activities on research in health, society and culture in collaboration with others. The programme is a partnership between Carnegie UK, Wellcome and the Wolfson Foundation, and it builds upon the first phase of Engaging Libraries, which ran from 2017 to 2018. Engaging Libraries Phase 2 has been running since December 2019, and it will come to a close in November 2021, as the participating projects were disrupted due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We gave the projects a 6-month extension to allow them to reimagine their projects, to deliver them online or through hybrid methods. So, what does Engaging Libraries aim to do? It has 3 aims: to energise and empower people through engagement with research about health, society and culture, to enable public libraries to really build upon and explore their civic role as safe spaces for participation and engagement with research, and thirdly, to facilitate partnerships between public libraries and universities or independent research organisations. The way that the programme aims to achieve these is by providing library services with funding for project activities, a development programme of learning and skills development for the staff that are involved, and an external evaluation of the programme. COVID restrictions meant that we delivered the majority of the development programme over Zoom rather than in person. However, this meant that more staff from projects were able to attend and benefit. I'll now pass over to Georgina, who will talk to you about a couple of case studies.
Hi, I'm Georgina and I work alongside Rachel at Carnegie UK and as part of the Engaging Libraries team. And the first example that I'm going to talk about is called Tickets to the Afterlife, and it's a joint project between 3 different library services. So they are Redbridge, who are in London, Newcastle in the northeast of England, and Kirklees, who are in Yorkshire, England. And you can see the 3 library services here. So just to give you an overview of the project, it explores the concept of libraries as death-positive spaces. So it's using the reputation of libraries as safe, trusted spaces to try and remove that taboo and the fear of talking about death, dying and grief. So Redbridge libraries have been involved in phase 1 of the programme, and in this phase, phase 2, They wanted to investigate whether people's attitude to death changed depending on where they live or their cultural backgrounds, or both. And the project aimed to engage the public with the latest research in the relevant fields. So this includes the fields of death studies, medical humanities, anthropology, human-computer interaction, and English literature. And the idea was to give people an opportunity to debate ideas with professionals from all these fields. The research team also played a key role in designing and co-creating the interventions, bringing unique insights about end-of-life planning and using action research and playful design tools to bring everything to life. So this project has actually been quite extensive, and it's continuing to evolve beyond the Life of Engaging Libraries Phase 2. So today I'm just going to give you a snapshot of their activity and tell you about the things that they ran during the first national lockdown in the UK. So that was during March to June of 2020. So this joint project were the first team to deliver anything online within the Engaging Libraries programme. And they ran 3 author events and what they call a death cafe over Zoom. So they found that these activities had a broader reach compared to what might have been achieved through in-person events. And the team were able to engage with members of the public from all over the country. They connect to people with the topics that of course felt particularly relevant during a global pandemic, but they also worked really hard to make sure that was handled sensitively. And I'm going to share just an example of their thinking in order to be able to do this. So some of the provisions that they put in place for the Death Cafe events were that the online event used breakout rooms on Zoom so that people could discuss things in smaller groups. And each breakout room was facilitated by an end-of-life specialist, and they were introduced to the project team by their research partners. There was a registration and pre-screening questionnaire that was required for people coming to this event. And in the marketing, it was clear that these events were not designed to be bereavement counselling. The project also created a space for the conversation to continue after the online event. So reflecting on the fact that in the physical space, often you'd have the opportunity to wait around and maybe talk to other people attending or to speak to panelists. They wanted to create a similar forum in the online space, and they did this through a Facebook group, which was very effective. So in terms of the evaluation, you'll see some quotes from some of the participants on screen just now. And overall, people described these events as being open and welcoming, and they gave people the opportunity to discuss topics that they wouldn't normally have access to. And some people reflected that this was about intellectual barriers, but more described the geographical or leisure time barriers, with the shift to digital events positively opening up access. A key benefit of the digital activity was the opportunity to involve and include members of the public who maybe wouldn't have been able to attend the library due to other commitments or even due to mobility and health issues. So I'll just give you a moment to read this final quote. So, as I said before, the team have continued to build on this with author events, and they've also established a Death Positive Libraries Facebook page, which you can obviously find online. They're now working on a mobile phone app, which allows people to access information around death and dying. For example, to find out about a range of traditions and also learn more about the options we have. Things like what happens to our identity, our possessions, and our remains after we die. Libraries Connected, a sector body for libraries in the UK, is working to roll out this concept in other library services around the country. So, for example, running webinars about death positive libraries. So I'm going to move on now to our second case study, which is all around the topic of fake news. And I'm going to talk about 2 different projects. So one is based in Treorchy, which is in Wales, that's our only Welsh project, and the other in Sutton, which is the Borough of London. So during the coronavirus crisis, the requirement for accurate and reliable information has been underlined. As we know, in the digital world, access to information is widespread, but knowing who and what to trust is incredibly difficult. Libraries are a safe place, and they're also places of knowledge. And libraries are ideally positioned to help empower people to be able to make judgments about the quality and the veracity of the information that they're coming across. So the library service in Sutton were particularly passionate about engaging pre-teens on this topic, and they worked with Dr. Gianfranco Palizzi, who is an expert in digital literacy, education and digital citizenship. And what they came up with was the idea of developing a computer game which would allow the audience to explore the topic of fake news in a format that would appeal to them. And they involved children in the design and the development of the game. So children helped to decide that it was going to be a mystery activity, exploring a mystery and trying to find the answers. And they also had a competition to allow children to design one of the characters that would feature in the game. And alongside the game, there was an educational resource designed for teachers and parents, and Dr. Palizzi was able to feed into all parts of this process with his own knowledge and expertise. So just to give you a snapshot of some of the learning from this project, it took time to establish that productive academic partnership. So Sutton actually explored the possibility of partnering with a couple of other academics and found that their sort of aims and motivations didn't quite line up. But eventually they found a partnership that has been really productive, and it was important to give it that time and to find the right person and the right match. The project also utilises obviously quite a creative engagement method that is appropriate for the audience, and I think we've already had evidence that that's inspired others to explore this in other ways. The computer game is quite difficult to evaluate, though, in terms of the impact that it has. So at the moment, there's a link when you finish the game to go through to an evaluation form. But the game's quite long, and some children sort of dip in and out. And so we're not necessarily understanding the learning that they're getting, or the engagement, the enjoyment that they're getting through using the tool, because they don't necessarily get to that form at the end. So the team are now looking at, in the next iteration of the game, if they can embed some form of evaluation in a different way. So the game has also served as a pathway for engagement. So the team have been organising a panel event with the academic for teachers and parents to come along and find out more. And then over the school holidays, which are just coming up, they're going to have children coming into the library to use the game. And that's kind of a starting point for opening this conversation around fake news. So I'm going to move on and speak about the project in Treorchy in Wales, which is also around the same topic, but it's quite different in terms of formats. So their aims are very similar: to raise awareness of the topic of fake news and develop critical thinking. And they wanted to use local history resources to raise this awareness of the real world effects of fake news. So they worked with a research partner at the University of Liverpool and develop various engagement methods. So the first thing they did was produce a fake news booklet, and this was included in click and collect bags that the library were preparing and handing out during lockdown. They then, when things started to reopen, they ran some school workshops. So these are working with primary school children of around age 11, and they developed resource packs collecting different types of evidence, such as photographs, newspaper articles, and census returns, so that pupils could be really hands-on with different types of information and do their research in the classroom. So they considered a particular event, a local history event, which was reports of rioting in the town in the early 1900s. And lots of the shops had smashed windows and were damaged, but there was one particular shop on the street that was owned by a local rugby legend, and that was unharmed. Or this was what was reported, was this particular shop wasn't vandalized. So the children had to explore the different sources of evidence and say what they thought happened and think about why that had been the case. So the evaluation of that was really interesting, and that one class showed an increased confidence in dealing with fake news. In another class, the sense of confidence in dealing with fake news actually decreased. And it's interesting to think about whether that was through an increased awareness, perhaps, of how difficult it can be to determine fake news and to make judgments about information. So Going forward, the team are now working on a video project, and that's to enable lots of people in the community to talk about fake news, and obviously they'll use that on social media to kind of promote more conversation around the issues. And so the learning from this project in Triorki, so the engagement with the academic was quite concentrated on those early stages of developing the fake news booklet, and the engagement hasn't been consistent throughout the activities. We found that there's been a variety of types of different university and library partnerships across the programme, and that is okay. That's it's not a case of one size fits all, and we're quite comfortable with having variation. However, we do think there's probably learning to take away about how best to set up a partnership at the outset. And another point of learning is, I think, around local history. So on the surface, it sounds like something that could be quite dry, but actually the children could really relate to the places and even some of the people that were being discussed in the research, and that made it really engaging for them. So I think that was a really creative use of local history resources. I'm now going to hand over to Rachel to describe the third case study.
So the third case study that we're going to talk to you about today is called Something in the Air. It's based at Calderdale Libraries, which is in Yorkshire in England. So Something in the Air aimed to engage local people of all ages in and around Selby Bridge, which is a village in Calderdale, with research around air quality and health. The project worked with Professor Marty van Tongeren and his colleagues from the University of Manchester, which is not far away from Calderdale. This project used a wide variety of engagement tools. During lockdown, the library began to talk to the local community and engage them with ideas around air quality. They asked their opinions on what was important to them, and all of this was done using a Facebook group set up by the library. Further on into the lockdown, the library delivered online events in partnership with specialists. So these included a talk about public health in the local area, focusing specifically on air quality, and one about clean air in the home and what can affect the air quality indoors. The project also had a more hands-on element. It offered people the opportunity to borrow and experiment with 2 different types of air quality monitors. People could take these away from the library and conduct their own mini experiments on issues that they were interested in. And they were then linked to researchers over social media or by email to talk about their findings and ask any questions. The project also had an accompanying project with a local primary school, where the students there were able to experiment with the air quality monitors in the classroom and also take part in an Ask the Professor session with Professor van Tongeren. The library also supplemented the online events with collections of books in Selby Bridge Library when the library was able to reopen, as well as having an author talk online. What the library found were that the air quality monitor experiments were really a great way of engaging and bringing people kind of into contact with research. So you can see a monitor here on the right. The results pictured show that how making homemade corn tortillas has a negative impact on indoor air quality, as it prompted the hazard warning, which you can see there in the purple. The participant said that she started thinking about getting a better extractor fan when she saw that this was having such an effect on the air quality inside her kitchen. You can also see on the right the effect of barbecues and fire pits that were being lit in the neighbourhood on what was the first Saturday evening after lockdown. So a lot of people were getting out and about, socialising, seeing people in their gardens. And this also prompted the participant to consider the knock-on effect of these activities and how it can kind of come indoors even when the activities are outside. The library also ran a challenge during the summer where children had to complete 4 challenges using air quality monitors borrowed from the library. After completing the challenges, they became an air quality champion, receiving a prize and a lovely badge that you can see here in the bottom left. So in terms of the academic partnership in this situation, it developed quite slowly due to COVID-19, as the researchers were involved in works around the links between air quality and COVID-19. So while they were waiting, the library staff worked closely together to create the Facebook group to engage local residents. And then when the researchers were able to come on board, a WhatsApp group was created, allowing for ongoing contact between the library and the researchers, and really acting as a leveler between the two groups. Over WhatsApp, everyone was able to share ideas and share responsibilities using this more informal way of communicating. Due to restrictions, the team also had to learn how to use air quality monitors remotely. However, this provided a really useful learning activity for the library staff and the researchers to undertake together. The project also found that having a combination of online events and talks, as well as the hands-on experience through borrowing an air quality monitor, was a really successful way of engaging the public. I'm now going to pass back to George to talk a bit about learning from the programme.
So throughout the programme, we've had an independent evaluator, and we produced an interim report towards the end of last year, and that really focused on the two projects that have been delivering projects online by that time. So you can find delivering public engagement digitally resource online, and this really just summarises the findings, and it includes some top tips for digital engagement. So in terms of the full programme evaluation, we're hoping to have that by the end of this year, and that will feed into a public engagement toolkit, which is due to be published in March 2021, and Rachel will say a bit more about that in a minute. So in terms of the top tips, I just wanted to summarise a few of those for you now, so those that have come through the learning so far. So first of all, in terms of online activities and technology, we would really encourage people to do lots of practice with that, and particularly to work out who is managing things behind the scenes. So projects often found it was helpful to have a producer role, someone who is doing all the tech in the background, and also it's important to have backup plans. So just as you do with an in-person event, to think about what could go wrong and how you might manage that. So what happens if there's participants who can't connect? Is there someone that can get on the phone and support them with that? What happens if a speaker has trouble with their connection? Can someone else stand in or the agenda around, and so on? So secondly, we'd encourage people to challenge themselves about how engagement can be two-way. So throughout Engaging Libraries, good quality public engagement has been a real focus of what we've done, and we really encourage library services to think about how their activities can really invite people in and get people to contribute, to participate, whether that's through conversation or whether it's through doing a hands-on creative activity. There's a real kind of depth of learning that comes from that type of engagement. And also it's worth considering whether you want to add in a social element. So as in the Tickets to the Afterlife example, a way that you can facilitate people continuing the conversation in perhaps a more informal space, whether that's in person or online. And lastly, I think as we've kind of echoed throughout the presentation, we recognise that it takes a lot of time and effort to build effective partnerships. And projects have told us that communication and ongoing communication is key. I think that's particularly true in light of the pandemic and how many things in the external environment have shifted for people, that they've where projects have been successful, it's keeping that communication going and being honest about, you know, changing priorities or changing availability, but what kind of working with what you've got and being able to be adaptable in that way. I'm just going to hand back to Rachel now to tell you a bit more about the toolkit.
Thanks, George. So when we were thinking about how to bring together all of this learning that we've got, particularly some of the things that George has already mentioned about partnerships with universities, we thought that creating a toolkit for public library services on public engagement activities with researchers, we thought that would be really helpful so that we could share practical tips and resources with the sector, as well as share some of the case studies of projects so far. So we hope that the toolkit will really embed the legacy of Engaging Libraries, and it will inspire services to undertake public engagement activities with researchers and universities, and really give them the skills and the knowledge to do this. The toolkit will be aimed at the public library sector, but we're also going to have content in it that will be relevant for and of interest to the higher education sector. What we want to do with the toolkit as well is to really evidence the value and the benefits of doing public engagement to the public library sector. We hope to do this through having case studies like some of the ones that we've shared with you and from further afield. We also want to demonstrate for both libraries and higher education institutions really what libraries have to offer as partners for higher education. As George was saying, we've got a lot of learning around partnerships from the programme so far. So we want to put together guidance around forming partnerships with universities, particularly around the establishment of them, how to maintain contact, how to work together, to manage expectations, and then what happens when you come to an end of a project, how to end that partnership, or maybe even think about developing it on another project. We're aiming to publish this early next year, and we'd be really interested to hear from anybody at the conference today who's had experience of working in partnership between a public library and a university from either side, and what worked well for you, what you wish you'd known before you went into the partnership, and just anything interesting that you think might be helpful to share with libraries in the UK and further afield. So please do get in touch with us if you've got anything to share there. I'd just like to wrap up now by thanking everybody so much for listening to our keynote speech today. And also thank you to LIANZA for having us. We're really delighted to be able to speak to an international audience and at such a well-renowned conference. So thank you very much for inviting us. We'd really welcome any questions, and we'll be able to get back to you after our presentation has been shown. And I understand that the questions will be sent to us. So we'll try and get back to you just as soon as we can. If you've been interested and had your imagination sparked by what we've talked about today, you can keep in touch and monitor the progress of the Engaging Libraries projects on Twitter by searching the hashtag #EngagingLibs. You can also follow Carnegie UK on Twitter to find out more information on our work on libraries and wellbeing. And finally, I'd just encourage you to look out for the toolkit that we'll be publishing again early next year. So again, thank you so much to everybody for listening, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Ngā mihi nui to Rachel and Georgina. That's a really fascinating presentation with 3 excellent case studies. Thank all of you too for your discussion in the forum. You've been sending each other links and having great chats along the way. And also some terrific questions have been sent through, which we will pass on to Rachel and Georgina and get back to you with their answers as soon as we can. And also remember, they would love to hear from you about your experience of partnerships between libraries and universities as well. So it can be a two-way conversation. So make sure that you do that. You now have how many? 7. You've got 7 minutes for a break before the upcoming concurrent sessions. These include 2 panels and 2 workshops, so lots of opportunity for gaining new knowledge and doing some interactive stuff as well. That kicks off at 10 minutes past 2. It's 6 minutes now. See you there. Mā te wā.